were the last moments like with your son?
Well, it was a 24-hour party. He decided to go on hospice November 29th, and we recorded every session. And, it was the first couple days, he was like, I can't believe this is really happening. And I have video. I would interview him all the time. I'm like, what does it feel like to die?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. No, we went deep. And he was like, well, I'm just kind of waiting to feel like I'm dying. Like, I know my body looks like I'm dying. He's like, but my mind doesn't feel that way. So it's kind of weird. Like, they tell me I'm dying, but I don't really feel like I'm dying. So every single day we would kind of go a little further with these conversations. And I'm like, do you feel like you're dying yet? And I have them all recorded. I'll listen to them. And I'm like, is anyone visiting you yet? And we would talk about the first thing you're going to be able to do is manipulate energy, your energy. Your soul is all energy. So what are you going to do? Are you going to what songs are you going to play me? Are you going to flicker the lights? My daughter, the two of them used to cook all the time. Every time she's in the kitchen, 3 flickers.
Regularly?
Oh yeah. So he was like, I'm gonna mess with your lights. Mm-hmm. So it's been so we would have these amazing conversations. And then on 11 days before he passed, I said, what, sweetie, you can wait until you're gone to have this memorial and everyone can cry and say what they want to say to you, but you're not going to be here for it. Or we can do this raging living memorial and we can have your fantasy food and invite everyone you want to be there, and everyone can hug you and tell you how much they love you, and it's going to be emotional, but then they have closure and you have closure. And then there's no stone left unturned. And he was like, let's do it.
That's
I'm
amazing.
Okay. So we 5:30 in the morning, put the meat on the Traeger and just had this whole crazy meal planned, and 200 people ended up coming to this house. And it's not a big house. So the whole backyard was packed. And, he went out and there were moments, it was emotional. He would come in, with me and his 2 siblings and kind of process and cry. And then he would go back out there. But he was comforting his friends, hugging them. And there were a lot of tears, but it was so beautiful. And we have that all on video, just the hugs and the embraces and the goodbyes. And he was like, it's not goodbye. It's just see you later. I'm going to be there to greet you and I'll see you on the other side. And, so many people were like, I've never thought of a living memorial. I didn't even know it was a thing. And I'm like, when you think about it,
I'm getting the chills.
Why would we wait? You know what I mean? Why couldn't he receive that while he was in his body and give them the final hug? Mm-hmm. Because when people die, it's I wish I could have said that, but it's so hard to get those words out if the elephant's in the room. I'm scared to address the fact that you're dying because I don't know how you're sitting with that. So we opened that space up for everyone.
That makes sense. I mean, just to relate it from my personal understanding in regards to even when people think my conversation comes about my loss of my dad in particular, and specifically with the conversation around the 9/11, whoa.
Yeah.
Once I crack my stupid jokes and it's I'm opening that door, then all of a sudden the floodgates come in and people are like, oh, this is okay. We got kind of past that little hurdle. Yeah. And now you can see that people, they want to ask questions. You want to ask them questions that you may think that person may be receptive negatively or too emotionally. But once you take the elephant out of the room, it does open that dialogue and people can be more comfortable. But you guys did that in a way that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is for me, that's if I'm fortunate enough, I have this conversation about the quick death, this or that, but and they have their pros and cons, I suppose. But to have that opportunity to have a living party, I personally wouldn't want it any other way. So the fact that you did that is remarkable.
The ceremony with his body.
Oh, okay. Go on.
So we were leading up to his passing and, Thursday night, final supper, Friday, Saturday night were rough. And then he said, Mama, you brought me into this world. I want you to bring me out. I just want you. And so his hospice nurse came in and I was out in the living room and said, his blood pressure's dropping, come in. And so I laid in bed with him and, he passed and I just laid with him for 30 minutes and we had a crew outside. There were probably 25 people just waiting outside. And, and so once I was ready and I had sat with him, I invited, his closest people in and they're like, what do we do? You know, they had never really seen a dead body. And here's their friend and their brother and their loved one, you know, laying in the bed deceased. And I said, we're going to take his clothes off, and then we're going to pull every drain and pick line out of his body. And so we stripped him. I said, let's get warm bins and washcloths. And there were like 12 hands bathing every inch of his body so gently and so beautifully.
Wow.
And then we took oil and essential oils, you know, biblical oils, sandalwood, myrrh, frankincense, lavender, and we anointed his entire body. And then I put salt water all over his face, and I put holy water on his crown. And then I shrouded him in this Indian cloth. And then we put earth on him, and it was like flowers and dirt, and people were out foraging on the hill, like eucalyptus branches and flowers and sand. And we sat with him for 8.5 hours, and there were hundreds of people who came through into this room and just, you know, got to sit with his body and look at this beautiful ceremonial ritual that we got to do. And I invited them in, and we had kids, we had 4-year-olds, we had, you know, and it's like showing this next generation that it's okay. Like, this is what we can do. And every single person that came and participated and put flowers on him in this room has shared with me that they got to experience something that they had no idea even existed. And the fear surrounding death and dying has now been removed. And so, like, for me, that is the most powerful work I can be doing, you know, because you ask anyone, what's your number one fear? It's dying. And what part of dying? It's typically the pain.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't know what that looks like, and it's different for everybody. But dying in itself, if we can remove the fear, knowing that it's ceremonial, and take that right back that we handed to the Western medical world and reclaim that as ours and own it, the world would be way less scary.
Yeah, it's so real. And again, you use the word ritual. It just brings it back to how long have tribes and in history and there's still other cultures that still have these more ritualistic approaches, being with the body. And again, it just comes back to facing it. And I think removing the elephant, as we said several times, but it's almost like your process is reverting back to tribal mechanisms that are still existing, of course,
as it should
but
be,
as have always been. And now it is that transition. It is that switch up with, I guess, Western medicine, whatever it is, that has just made it so much more cold.
Yeah, I mean, it's like embalming and open caskets with, like, you know, drag queen makeup. Like, it's just not, like, what is that?
What is that?
Where did that come from?
We got to make the body look, it's like plastic surgery after you're dead.
Like, they're plastic, like, it's so bizarre to me when you think of, like, Hinduism and Buddhism and Africa and ceremony and these, it's like honoring this vessel, you know, that lived this beautiful life. And it's the closure that family needs to find peace in the situation. And now it's like, they're dead, take them to the morgue, pump them with, like, formaldehyde. And, you know, it's so unattached. Like, there's a detachment between the human existence and death and dying that I feel so called to bridge that gap.
Beautiful.
To bridge that gap and bring back the ceremonial rites and own that. Those are our rights we're allowed to have for our family and the ones we love. Yeah,
in the traditional funeral, you know, how many times do people say after they go through the embalming and all that stuff, it's like, oh man, it doesn't even look like him or her. And I mean, obviously, after your body leaves, like, your soul, whatever you want, leaves, you're not going to look the same, of course.
No.
You're not there.
No.
But it's like you're fabricating it.
You have a stranger decorating this vessel.
Yeah, who the hell are you?
Who didn't know, you know, it's like, it's the most bizarre thing.
It is so
I can't
weird.
wrap my head around it. I'm like, no.